Tuoyo, let me jump over to you very quickly because you lead the legal team at one of the leading energy companies in the continent. We've heard from Professor Amechi about the importance of ESG in a country like Nigeria. But for many of us, people like me, we're more interested in how it affects us as businessmen. What is the need for us? So Tuoyo, please tell us, in your experience, are there any specific benefits for companies and businesses, especially in the energy sector? Over to you, Tuoyo. You're muted, Tuoyo, if you're speaking. Tuoyo, are you there?
Tuoyo is still on mute.
Tuoyo, you're on mute if you're. Oh, you said you can't unmute. Can you please unmute him?
Okay.
Can you ask? Can you click?
Okay, can you go to the second one, please?
It's done now.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, it said the host is not allowing me to unmute, but it's sorted out now. So it's
okay.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, it said the host is not allowing me to unmute, but it's sorted out now. So thank you. I think it's clear for those in the oil and gas sector that we can't ignore ESG issues anymore, whether it's the environmental, the social, or the governance aspect. But I mean, it's for our benefit that we take them very seriously. For one, the government has demonstrated that it's it's taking environmental issues seriously now. I think it was only a very short time after COP26 that the Climate Change Act was introduced. We're still waiting for the regulations that will demonstrate or dictate what corporates are required to do under that act, but it shows the government's commitment to environment and climate change that was done so quickly. There's the NOSDRA Act, which was passed a few years back, and we've already seen NOSDRA issue fines of billions of dollars for oil spills. So I think everyone playing in the oil and gas sector has to take it very seriously, even if it's just to protect yourself from government sanctions or fines. We've seen that there's a requirement for ESIA approvals from the federal ministry for any oil and gas projects. So the government is it's taking the environment and climate change very seriously, and we have to do the same. If you've been sanctioned in one area, it's going to be very difficult for you to get regulatory approval for any future oil and gas project. So even just from the compliance perspective with the government, it's key that we take those very seriously. For us in the oil and gas sector, there's nothing we do that doesn't, and Professor touched on that, there's nothing we do that doesn't really touch the society in which we operate. If you're developing a project, you're going to impact on communities. So you have to be very conscious of what your project is doing to the community in which you operate. You have to make sure you get alignment from the communities. We tend to, you'd have to put MOUs in place with the community, and if you don't take your community seriously, then they could either hinder your project altogether, or after the project has even commenced, then you find that the community can shut down your project. So from a social aspect, you have to be very conscious of your project's impact on the community, and even your contractors, if they're using policies which are contrary to ESG, for example, using child labor, forced labor, then that could impact you as an organization if there are any sanctions on your contractor. So from the social side, of course, we have to be very, very conscious of what we're doing. From the governance side, I think we've seen many examples of very successful businesses which have been taken down, not because they're not running profitably, but just because of one governmental lapse. It has affected them from a reputation perspective. And I think once your reputation is severely damaged, it's very, very difficult to get back on track. So we have to ensure that we've put in place a framework from a governance perspective to make sure we're operating efficiently, operating in a way that guards us against any sanctions, any fraud, etc., anything that could taint the organization's reputation. So those are examples from sort of a defensive perspective where you have to ensure that you're focused on ESG if you don't want anything to hinder your business. But there's also the positive aspect of the ESG. I think for example, your professor talked about it, how funding is now a bit more difficult, particularly from the West, if ESG is not a key part of your focus. Of course, with the Ukraine war, there's a bit of, we expect there'll be a bit of backtrack, and we're already seeing that. But aside from that, we were finding that investors, whether DFI or overseas equity investors, and even your ordinary lenders, they'll test your ESG compliance. And if they see that you're not an ESG compliance organization, you're not going to get the funding you require. Likewise, if you want to go into a strategic partnership with another business, they will check how compliant you are on your ESG obligations. If you're not focused on ESG, then it's unlikely that they will partner with you. So even just from a business perspective of attracting the right stakeholders, strategic partners, the right equity investors, right lenders, attracting DFIs, it's very important that we are absolutely focused on ESG. And then from the positive environmental aspect on the business, for natural gas, for example, I know the West is moving away from natural gas, but natural gas is 30% more efficient or cleaner than your alternative fuels. So a company switching to natural gas because it's focused on ESG is going to be, we're finding that such companies, they're not only protecting the environment because they're emitting less greenhouse gases, but even from a maintenance perspective, it's easier to maintain your gas generators. And then from the perspective of your savings, we've seen in Nigeria how diesel costs have escalated in the last 1 year. So if you switch to natural gas, which is cleaner, if you switch to renewables, you're focused on the environment but from a business perspective, you're driving down your costs very, very significantly. And then there's a recent initiative from the Federal Ministry of Environment, which is to allow companies that are cleaner or operating cleaner to be able to get carbon credits and trade those carbon credits. And so even from that perspective, there's the business angle of additional revenues from being able to trade carbon credits. So there's a vast number of benefits to being focused on ESG or on the business.
Thank you so much.